Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Amber, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for making your way here to the webinar today. Let me tell you real quickly a little bit about me. I have been a champion of DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging for I'm afraid to tell you how many years since we're recording. I don't think I'll tell you how many. Just know it's a long time. And I started out in the hotel business in operations, found myself being an advocate for folks and gravitated into human resources. I've been practicing human resources since 2000. And while practicing as an HR practitioner, I have always been a champion for everybody in the building, for me, the companies that I've worked for, and have always been a champion of DEIB before we had these letters that everybody seems to be so concerned about these days and so afraid of and so forth. And so um, I have been working for a company. It was Marriott at the time. And when I was with Marriott, they were already doing a lot of this work before we had these words. They were looking at pay equity. They were looking at folks that were in underrepresented groups and how they would maneuver through the organization. And I was, again, in operations, but seeing what was being done. And when I got into HR, I saw what was happening behind the scenes and how we were looking at succession planning with a DEI lens. We were looking at pay equity with a DEI lens. We were doing programming through a DEI lens. And I took that with me from company to company. So I went from Marriott to Starwood, from Starwood to Wyndham, and to where I am today with my company. And I've been perfecting this work since 2000. And in 2018, doing this as an area director of HR over multiple properties and doing this work, I got recognized by Wyndham because usually you see that happening at the corporate level, but not necessarily in the field, in the hotels where we're checking in and checking out guests and serving customers, waiting tables, cleaning rooms, and what have you. And they saw this work being done in the property level, and it afforded me an opportunity. I was promoted to the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. So I'm now leading these efforts since 2018. And then through the pandemic, things shifted, like for many of us, particularly in our world of DEI and as well as in hospitality, significantly. And I found myself out on the street like many others in hospitality, but I was one of the lucky ones. And I got on with this very progressive, very inclusive, uh, um, community focused organization. And I did that right at the height of these murders of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others. And I joined this company at that time. And so I'll share with you, experiences that I bring to the table. I encourage you to use the chat. In fact, drop it in the chat now. I want to know where you are beaming in from, and let's share the love and share the accolades. We need this. Folks that are doing this work. It is a long haul. It has been, and it will continue to be, quite frankly. And so we need to cheer each other on. So I want to see the love in the chat, affirming each other. And hey, listen, I might say something that you don't necessarily agree with. And for me, part of the work that we do in this space is having those difficult conversations. So if I say something that you don't necessarily agree with, drop it in the chat and let's talk about that. I find that more interesting, quite frankly. And I find that that's how we make things happen. So please do that. And so before we go any further, I would like if Amber could do a poll because I want to see where you are in your journey and what we're working with. So Amber, if you'll launch this poll, tell us where you are in your DEIB journey. So are you just getting started? No formal DEIB strategy yet? Early stages, developing or launching a DEIB strategy? Midway, actively implementing and refining our strategy? well advanced, have a well established DEIB strategy with a measurable outcomes, or not sure, or need more guidance on where to begin. So let me know where you are so we could see what I'm working with the folks that we have on the call today. While we're doing that, I'm going to jump in this chat real quick and see. I wonder if that my good friend Jules that I see at the top of that. Hello, Jules. Good to see you in here. Bonjour from Montreal. Love it. Love it from Canada. We have a property up in Toronto, Iowa, Washington State, Santa Barbara, Baton Rouge, one of my favorite locations in New Orleans. We had a property there. Love it. And then South Carolina was just there not too long ago. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I will tell you all while the results are about to roll in here, I'm coming in today from Athens, Greece. We have a location that we're about to open here next month. So I'm here. Okay, so the majority of the group, early stages, developing or launching a strategy. That's great. Followed by midway, and then a small group that are in the advanced stages. Okay, all right, good. So I know what I'm working with. That will work. Thanks for doing that. So without further ado, let's get underway. I mentioned this company, Atelier Ace, is a lifestyle branded company headquartered out of New York, founded in '99 in Seattle. We had 10 locations, including Japan, Canada, Australia, and Greece. I could do a whole nother webinar on these strategies doing this abroad. I'm doing a DEI class for our orientation for our team here on Monday and Tuesday, and I could do a whole separate class on that. I will say that this company is super inclusive. One of our values is ACEs for everyone, and it's built on creative collaboration and diversity. If you go look us up right now, you will see that it is for everyone. It's hard to discern our guests from our team members. We don't wear name tags. Again, just super inclusive. So we have folks from all walks of life that work with us. And we have this you can see us coming. We know who we are, and we have this veracity around making beautiful things happen and bringing people together. One of the first hotels to have a communal table in the lobby, inviting creatives to come in, utilize the Wi-Fi, get their work done, and it's just a great communal, collaborative place to be. And that is our company, has been before I arrived. So for a DEI person like me, I had a pretty easy going. But there were some things that were happening at the time. Our company went out, like many companies, with a Black Lives Matter solidarity post. And again, super inclusive, well-intentioned. But then there was some, like you saw, it's no secret that's out there. What occurred, and there was some people that had concerns about that. Really, do you think that Black Lives Matter in some of our locations? And I joined and put some things in place because even though they were super inclusive, very thoughtful, very intentional, there were some things that needed to happen to put things on track. And it was very easy for me, unlike a lot of other companies, because again, well intentioned, well thoughtful. And so that's what I'm going to share with you. There will be 4 best practices that we're going to talk about. And the first one is ensuring your CEO and your senior leaders are all in. And I will tell you, for me, I had a conversation with the CEO who told me about what was happening. And I could just tell through a series of questions that I was having that this person's a very people focused individual. And some of the senior leaders that I talked to that interviewed me, also very people centered, people focused. And I knew that they were all in, which is why I took the opportunity to join this company. And I will tell you, it is unlike any other company I've ever worked for. What I had to do though was I needed to conduct a thorough assessment. So we'll talk about that. And then we needed to build a sustainable 2 to 3 year strategy. You can't just go in and say, okay, this is what we're going to do because it's the right thing to do, and then think that that's going to fly. You need to put things in place that are sustainable because, as I said at the top of this, these are difficult conversations that need to be had. These are um, sophisticated programming that you put in that need to be able to withstand the criticism, the questioning that come in when you were talking about folks in underrepresented groups. That's always part of that conversation. You have to know how to weather through that. So we'll talk about that. And then the easiest part, quite frankly, once you get through those first three are the hardest. Is your CEO on board? How do you get your CEO on board? Doing an assessment, going through all the data, presenting it, and then putting this, developing what that strategy is. The implementation is easy, right? For me anyway. So we won't spend a lot of time there. So let's talk about ensuring your CEO and leaders are all in. The CEO must be all the way in. They have to put skin in the game, right? They need to put themselves in the game, and it requires that from not only the CEO or the president, the GM, whatever that top leader is, but also their senior leaders, their direct reports. So, quite frankly, if the CEO is not on board, then everybody's time and efforts will be wasted. And I will tell you, if you're having a conversation early on and you're not getting that from the CEO, it is a wasted effort. And just keeping it real, you may have to look for another organization, because if you don't have that, you're not going to make a whole lot of progress. And that is what sucks the life out of a lot of people in this this field of practice, is butting up against that. So you got to do it. And I'll give you how you do that in just a moment. So once you have that, you're going to be able to do that. So number one is leaders will have to address what is uncomfortable. You have to have those crucial conversations, those uncomfortable conversations, and you need to be real specific. You have to be real specific about what these actions are that we're about to embark on, and take a reading on what that is. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing I suggest is that you determine what is it your CEO wants beyond the usual rhetoric, beyond the usual, well, what's the right thing to do? No, tell me what it is that you want to accomplish. And you start taking those notes based on what it is they want to accomplish. And then from what it is that they want to accomplish, you have to put together a business case that shows how you can save them money, how you can make them money. And doing that, you can do those two things. I can save you money. I can show you how to do that. I can show you how we'll even make more money, and we'll be able to accomplish whatever it is that you want to do. And most senior leaders, right, is very business focused. So they're going to tell you what their KPIs are, what those things are that they want to accomplish. And then you weave that in to your business case. And if you're talking about making money and saving money, that's, at the end of the day, unless you're a nonprofit, if you are a for-profit, that's what we're here for to begin with, right? So we need to get that. We need to get that established right away, and that's going to get their attention. Tell me what it is that you want to accomplish, and then I'll show you how to get there. If you do those things, you're going to get their attention. Once you have their attention, you have that lined up. Now you need to figure out what it is you're working with, and you need to do an assessment. So you're going to need to analyze and assess the senior leaders. You need to make sure that they were on board, and you need to get their feedback. What is it that's holding our organization back from hitting these things? What is it that's holding us back that are problematic? You need to talk to the frontline staff. So do you have engagement surveys? Or you're looking at that? Do you have focus groups? And are you talking to them? To this day, I still, wherever I go, excluding where I am now in Athens, because we're not open yet, but whenever I go to a property, I still hold focus groups. I still have listening sessions because I want to hear what is happening. So I'm always listening to staff members to hear what's going on. and you need to take in some sort of fashion. It's either a focus group, it's an employee engagement survey, the commentary that comes with employee engagement survey, and you're analyzing what it is that they're saying. And then you need to identify the impact or the gaps from your policies and from your practices. Those practices are the toughest one because, right, it's not anything that's written, but what is our, when you were doing this assessment, you need to say, well, how does this happen? How do we accomplish whatever this is? How does that work? Tell me how it is, or show me the policy, and then what has been the impact from this policy. You need to, obviously we need to look at the demographics, and we need to look at what is the impact, what are the gaps in those analyses of your demographics, who's there and who's not there. We need to review and assess our procurement practices. One of the first things I did with this company was, who are we buying from? Who are we not buying from to fill all of the things that we put in our hotel rooms and to get the services that we need to do? Who are we doing business with? And then one of the obvious ones, right? Hiring. What are our hiring and what are our onboarding practices? What does that look like? We need to take a look at that. We need to do an assessment. Who are we hiring? Who are we not hiring? Why are we hiring X amount of this group versus X amount of this group? Wherever that is. And you should be looking in your market, what is there to begin with, right? And that's part of the assessment. That's when we're talking about a thorough assessment. Is it's one thing to run the demographics in your organization, but what is where your organization sits, what does it look like outside of that building? And is your representation of who you're hiring look like what's outside of the building? You should be looking at that. You will find that through your talent acquisition data, who's applying, who's not applying, who's getting hired, who's getting promoted, who's not getting promoted. Separations. Who are we asking to leave our organization? And what does that look like? How many of this group versus this group? Are we terminating folks faster than other folks? And then we have to ask those questions. And you'll get that from your focus groups, you'll get that from your engagement survey. Some of that, there will be some telltale signs there. What programs are in place? Do you have a mentor-mentee program? Are there sponsors programs? How many and who are in those programs? Who's been promoted, as I said? Business resource groups, do you have them? That would be another area where you could get data from. Who's attending those groups? What does the membership look like? And then not only what does the membership look like, but if a particular business resource group or employee resource group or affinity group, any one of those three, who is attending those? Is senior leadership involved in those? Is senior leaders attending those? All of that you need to gather. And then there may be something that I haven't that is specific to your organization. So what other data do you have that you can analyze? Certainly compensation. One of the first things that I looked at was compensation. Who's getting paid? What do the performance reviews look like? And you line them up. Engagement surveys, cross-referenced by your demographics. So when you run that, you look at what do women think versus the whole group? What do men think versus the whole group? If you are in the US, you will have the demographics. What do Black folks think? What do Asians think? You want to look at, are they more engaged, less engaged? So you go through all of that, right? So once that has happened, once you've collected all of that data, you're looking for the trends or what is missing. You should also look at current events that are happening outside of the building. What's happening in your market? What's happening in your area? to the extent that it's impacting your current workforce, there's something big that's going on culturally nearby here in Athens, immigrants and the influx of immigrants coming in is a pretty significant impact here in Athens. I want to know about that. I want to understand that. And are we hiring folks from that organization? Not hiring folks from that organization? What do folks think here about what's happening? So you want to look at current events. Well, it's not Victor. It's not happening in my hotel. Well, if it's happening outside of your organization, your hotel, your business, your folks are probably talking about it in your building. So you need to be aware of what's happening externally. Anything that's major, anything that's big. And then finally, you're looking for the practices that are helping or hindering the systemic issues, the cultural issues that are happening in your location. And are you uncovering microaggressions? And you're only going to find that through talking to folks. Are there microaggressions happening? Are there unconscious biases happening? Is there workplace bullying going on? Because you could say, quite frankly, you could say that you're doing, oh no, Vic, I do my harassment training. Every year we do it, or every 2 years, we're in California, we do it for our leaders. But is it still happening? Right? Who's showing up for those courses? Have you had them? Do you have a talent development and a succession program in place? And is there exposure there? Who are your high potentials? Who's designating who the high potentials? And what do the high potentials look like? What do they look like? It's that thorough. So I've been going for quite a bit. I just want to take a quick look and see if there are any questions. Would love to hear more about global expansion DEI strategies. Yes, we won't be able to do that today unless we finish early, which is not likely. I have a tendency to get on my soapbox and go a while, but Amber, that might be another class. And then someone mentioned voluntary or terms. I would look at both. If you look at the HR metrics, we are not quite where we need to be. It's manual process. And so we do look at, right now we're looking at involuntary, but when I worked at Wyndham, we looked at voluntary versus involuntary. We looked at both. At the moment, I'm not doing that, quite frankly, but I would suggest that you're looking at both, because there may be folks that are that are involuntarily leaving you faster than others. And why is that? Which, quite frankly, is usually where there are problems, right? Where you have people leaving us, they're usually leaving us because of a leader, because of a leader, right? And what is that leader doing and not doing? So yes, I would look at both. Great question. Keep them coming. All right, so that is the assessment. So let's move into building a sustainable 2 to 3 year strategy. You've collected the data, you've analyzed it, you want to start building out the strategy. Now, keep in mind a DEIB imperative that you originally discussed with the CEO and the solution. What's the solve for any of those demographic gaps, any of those organizational gaps? What are your core principles? We should be looking at what are the core principles. As I said at the top of this, one of ours is pretty easy. Most companies probably say that inclusivity is one of them. It is for ours, but it's on our website. I'm not talking about anything that nobody knows. If you go to our career site and join us, our pillars are there, right? And we are considered. We think that we should take our time and look at everything of just when we're going to place a piece of art in our rooms. We take a great deal of consideration in how we are doing that and what it is that we are using, right? We are very inclusive about how we do things. We come from a place of curiosity. We're a very creative company, and we come from a place of curiosity, which is a tenet of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? You come from a place of curiosity to learn more about a culture. So you should be weaving whatever that is. Those are three of what ours are. But for you, what are those? What are those? What is that battle cry? What is that mission? What is that vision for you? And that should be part of your DEIB strategy. Because if you're saying that these four things, these five things are really important to us, how do you tie that back in to your DEIB? Because if you're tied to that, that's tied to your business, that's how your business will continue to maintain. So those need to be reflected in that. Also, whatever you learned from talking to those folks, you need to make sure that's woven in, and that should be part of your communication plan to help tell your story to internal and external constituents, right? So you should have all of that information. And if you are sending out a communication about this new program, this new process, this new strategy that you're doing, and it is filled with your core values that people should know and live and breathe, right? Then it's not even about what is being trying to be co-opted right now. It's not a DEIB strategy. It's your business strategy. This is your business strategy. No one could take that down. Someone asked me on a podcast recently, are you changing? Are you not calling it inclusion and equity now? Are you moving away from equity? No, I'm leaning in. I'm leaning in. I know that for my business, I know what the things are that are important to us. And I know that if I am my business goal, my KPIs are this to help run our business, right? You that's how we become a success. That's how we become a success. And then in order to lock that in, the final component is you have to have governance. You have to have accountability. Are whatever these business goals are, your director of sales and marketing, your VP of marketing, your VP of sales, any organization, your VP of sales has a certain number they're supposed to hit. And in any organization, if your VP of sales is not hitting the numbers you're supposed to hit as a business, what happens? Right? There's a conversation that's had. And if there's been enough conversations, they're asked to leave the organization, right? Because they're not hitting their sales. It is the same thing when you build this strategy around your business goals, and it's part of their performance review, it's part of their KPIs, that there are X amount of things that need to happen. It's the same thing. You have to treat it with that same kind of energy. That's the accountability. You need to have that accountability. So if there's programming that needs to be happening and one particular discipline is not attending those, that's a conversation. If there is a representation you're looking at, we look at this, we look at what does our workforce look like, our frontline staff, and what does that look like, male, female, what's the racial demographics, and we believe that our representation as we move up the senior leader, as we move up the leadership ranks, it should be pretty close. It should be pretty close to what your frontline staff looks like. We believe that's the case. And when that's not happening, I have conversations with the GMs. We meet quarterly and we look at that. Let me look at your promotions. Let me look at your transfers. Let me look at your representation. Let me look at your high potentials, and who are you putting on a development plan? Who haven't you put on a development plan? And that's how we hold them accountable. So there has to be some governance in there. Another thing, sustainability. When I first arrived, one of the first things that was asked of me was to implement employee resource groups. They asked me, we should do employee resource groups. And I had done that when I worked for Wyndham. We had 6 employee resource groups. And I said to this group, we have a DEI board of people from across different levels of the company and represented from each of our properties. And this was one of the things that they said, hey, we need to do introduce employee resource groups because they were doing their research, and that was one of the things that they thought that should be implemented. And I said, no, we're not ready. We're not ready for that. There is a lot of work that needs to happen, just basic work that we should put in place so that that is sustainable for something like an employee resource group. And I will tell you, here we are now 4 years later, we still haven't implemented it. And that's because what I have been doing is focus groups, and I see that there's more value in focus groups. And quite frankly, for hotels, we're busy checking in and checking out guests. We're busy serving customers in the restaurant. It is difficult to have a president of your Asian resource group or your ability resource group to have a president, a co-president, a treasurer, membership, programming, and meet whatever that is, monthly, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and to sustain that when you're busy opening hotels. We were also, when I joined, we were in the process of opening in out of the country and in the country, in the US and outside of the US. We're busy doing those things. That's not something that's going to be sustainable at this time, but let's do focus groups. We could manage that. So those are the kind of conversations, and difficult conversations. These were, again, senior leaders and some that were on this board that felt like we needed to do that. And you have to come from a place of, hey, let's look at all of these other things here that are more sustainable so we could support it. Let's put that in year 5 or year 6. Which, by the way, I will say, we're 4 years in. We're now about to look at going back now and coming up with, should we be changing some of the tenets we did 4 years ago? So it's always something that's living and breathing. Now, before you go to market, right, you've had these kind of conversations that I mentioned, and you need to be prudent to review portions in part or in whole with a diverse cross-section comprised of your leadership throughout the organization and your frontline staff. If you have business resource groups, you should use them. And you should be talking with what you just built before you go to market and have a conversation with them. Hey, here are some things that we are talking about, either the whole thing or a portion of some of the things that you're doing through another group of folks, so that you're not just making these decisions just in your own bubble. I have enough, I'm humble enough to say, hey, these are, I bring a lot of years of experience, but I still, to this day, I still run things through my DEI board saying, hey, I'm thinking about this. This is what I'm thinking about doing. So when you're just starting out, you should do that. And then you build a communications plan. And then once you have the communications plan, I would have somebody, a group of folks, key stakeholders, looking at that messaging that you're going to do internally and externally. So before you go, I can't tell you how many times we've seen it where someone comes up with a great idea, they didn't run it through anybody, and then it goes off to market. And then what happens when it gets out there, where it was a homogenous group of folks, all marketing or all sales, all operations, only operations looked at this one idea and they think it's great because it's operation focused, right? And it's beautiful. If I'm in operations, I love this. But did the other cross-functional teams look at it? Same thing with this. It would be the same thing. You should have other folks look at that before you go out there. You'll have fewer mistakes. So as you're moving through this, I just said this a moment ago, right? You need to be humble. You need to be transparent all along the way. Because again, yes, I bring a lot of years. I'm a very confident guy, if you couldn't already tell. But I know that I will be better. Feedback is a gift, and I grow from that. So you want to do this. You want to have regular intervals of check-ins with those constituents. Use the same energy as you're bringing a new product or new service to market, right? When we are about to launch a new product, there's a whole lot of energy wrapped around that. The same thing when you're launching this new strategy. It's the same kind of energy. Implementation, as I said, pretty easy. You want to implement your team member programs, whatever your engagement is, whatever training activities. You want to engage partners, contractors for ongoing sustainability of your strategy. What do I mean by that? This is a marathon. It is not a race. These are difficult conversations. These are difficult programs that we have to put in. And so usually DEI programs, I'm sure if that was one of the poll, it's usually a one-person operation. Right now for our company, it's me. I do have two people on my team, predominantly in HR, and it's mainly me that's doing the DEI through my DEI board, through my HR team. And most of the time, that's what it looks like in most organizations is usually one, two people, right? So employ partners to help you with some of this. Employ contractors if you can. And if you can at the moment, that's what you should be building into your 2 to 3 year strategy is a budget for some of those things because you cannot, it's not sustainable for yourself to push this, push this rock sometimes feels like going up a hill. Again, I have it easy. I do have it easy. But even in my organization, there are things sometimes that are roadblocks, and that can wear on you. So make sure that you're looking at partnerships. Make sure you're looking at contractors to help you with that. And you build that into your business case at the very beginning. When you're talking to your CEO, I can show you how to make money. I can show you how to save money. Here's some of the things that we need to do to get there. It takes budget for programming. It takes budget for some of the things that we need to employ. I can't do all of the assessments, perhaps, might be one thing. We did look at that early on, whether we were going to have a contractor do some of the assessments. And for the amount of money, I said, look, that's something that I think we're going to have to do. Make sure that you establish measurements, create a dashboard to track your efforts and your results. Because oftentimes it's a mistake in HR, quite frankly, happens a lot of times, is we have a tendency to shy away from the numbers, shy away from the data. But in order to be a successful business partner for your organization, you have to show your numbers. You have to show where you're making success. And so create a dashboard, track those efforts. I'm going to take a quick look. In my strategy, I also look at promotion rates, PIPs, performance reviews by race, gender. Absolutely. And tenure level. Yep. I heard a DEI leader say she has a team of 3. I've said that before. Yes, I have said that. I have a team of 3. Really? You do? Yes. It's me, myself, and I. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. All right. Let's see. All right, I got some. That's it. I do have a couple more slides, but before we do that, we have another poll. This is another Q&A opportunity. So Amber, you want to launch that poll, and we'll see if this triggers some questions. If you haven't had a chance, now is the time as you're doing this poll. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. I think we also have Q&A. So if there's a question that you don't necessarily want anybody to know that you're asking that question. That's okay. Use the Q&A, and then Amber will see that. I'm not actually able to see those, but Amber will see them and read that to the group. Please protect the name of whoever sent it if they're using Q&A. So, which aspects of building a DEIB strategy do you find most challenging? Is it getting senior leadership fully committed? Is it conducting a thorough assessment? Building a sustainable long-term strategy? Is it implementation and the tracking progress, or is it ensuring authentic inclusion and representation? So what do you find to be most challenging? And then we'll take maybe the top 2 that come out of this. Let's see how we're doing on time. Yeah, we're making good time. All right. So the poll is in. And so getting senior leadership fully committed. Yep. And then sort of a tie between everything else. So we'll just talk about getting senior leadership fully committed. What else can I tell you? I will say it happens to us all. When I told many of you that were on the call at the beginning, when I had been with Wyndham at this point, when I made it to the corporate offices, I had been an HR director, then an area a task force, sort of special ops where I would go into locations and sort of see what was going on, do some assessments, and then get that particular team back on track. And then I became an area director of HR, and I had been with Wyndham at this point. I'm going to say six years at this point. And I had been doing, again, as I said, and those of you that came in after this, I've been doing a lot of uh, programming initiatives around DEI work at the property level, not really have been seen before. It was in fact, similar things that were happening on at the corporate level. And I got the opportunity when that position opened up. Quite, again, as I know, I'm a very confident person, but please don't take it as bragging. I got tapped on the shoulder and said, "Hey, would you be interested in this opportunity?" And the EVP asked me that, and I said, "Yes, absolutely." Um, and then they set me up to interview with the VP that was overseeing corporate social responsibility, and it was really like a courtesy to that person that I interviewed with. Although I think she could have said, maybe she had an issue with me, but it seemed like it was sort of a foregone conclusion that I got this, and been doing this work, very capable. I get there, and then I start pitching some of the things that I had been doing or things I thought about doing to the EVP about things that I think we should do, and they were sort of hitting and bouncing off, hitting the rim and bouncing off. Several of those, and I was frustrated. Um, Now, this EVP, though, for me, the reason why I continue to stay engaged with this is in having conversations. I was looked upon as sort of the rookie, and I needed to the way I saw it, I needed to put my time in because this person was all in the work that we were doing and certainly had tons of years more experience than me. And so, I would say this, if your CEO, your president, your person is walking the talk and doing those things, then you need to then figure out, is your business case, go back and look at your business case and make sure that it has the things that we talked about at the top. Does it have metrics included? Does it have governance included? Does it have whatever it is that senior person told you that they want out of this strategy, and is that included in there? And that's usually where you can go back and refigure things to get it lined up to get the buy-in. But also, as I said at the top of this, if they're not walking the talk, if they are telling you these things, but you see them promoting others that are not capable, we've seen this happen, right? Stepping over someone who's underrepresented, that is more than qualified, and hiring someone who is just got, is from that same particular group, just saying it like it is, right? Then that might not be the right place for you. That may not be the right place for you. So, you may have to consider that. Let's see. I have a client whose VPs are ERG sponsors and do not get their annual bonus unless they can prove that they attend at least 4 events for their. I love it. They have to attend at least 4 events for their ERG during the year. One of the biggest things that has occurred in organizations, I've seen it, where the ERG is having some fantastic programming, but the senior leader is not there, and that is telling to the organization. So why not tie that in to their performance reviews? You got to attend those. And some people will say that's performative. I disagree. I disagree. I think the programming alone sets the tone. Yes, for the most part, people outside of whatever that group is, but also sometimes within that group. When I joined this company, before I arrived in July of 20. Well, in May or so of 20, this company announced, hey, we're going to celebrate Juneteenth. That's going to now be a holiday. Congratulations. Right. And I come along in July, don't even think anything of it. It's passed. I'm working on all the things that we've talked about so far. But we get back around into the beginning of the year. I'm looking at programming for the year. And I'm talking to my focus groups. And I'm saying at the top of the year, we have what's called a Black folks virtual hangout. Because I have hotels. I'm sitting in New York, and I have hotels in New York. I have hotels in California, hotels in New Orleans, and I have folks from all across the country. And I'm asking, hey, what did you all do what kind of education did you do around Juneteenth? Because I know from my own experience that I had just found out about Juneteenth myself maybe 10 years prior to that, prior to 2020. So yeah, around 2010 is when I learned about Juneteenth. And so a whole lot of folks didn't know anything about Juneteenth outside of Black folks, but even for Black folks. And so I did some programming and training around that. I don't think that's performative. I think that's educational. All right, probably preaching to the choir here. Okay, I think that was it for any other questions. So let's go. Did I answer your question? Who was that had some concerns? Was that helpful? Drop that in the chat. And I'm going to give you, I always like to give some value. So let's talk about bonus best practices. So if you haven't been on a diversity committee outside of your organization, you should. You learn more when you hear from other organizations, so you should, but that's usually already the case. You probably are, right? If you're on this webinar, it's probably through this organization, right? But are your senior leaders attending those? Are your senior leaders attending those? And you should do that and make that a KPI, that they should be attending something, National Diversity Council, whatever that is, locally, Tri-State Diversity Council. They should be, your senior leaders should be involved in that. Do you have a diversity council? And is there representation from all levels of the organization? Sometimes it's, where I will see as a misstep, it's just, managers. So do you have frontline staff that are on there? And by the way, whenever I ask for frontline staff, we have a tendency to go to, Johnny on the spot, the person that's really great at whatever it is that they're doing, frontline staff member, but they're shy, they're bashful, they're afraid to have conversations. They have difficulty talking to other senior leaders, even though they're great at customer service. That might not be the best person. You need somebody that has the gift of gab. You may need somebody sometimes that rails against the organization, and we have a tendency to be afraid of that. But if what they're telling you is good feedback, then that might be somebody you need to have on the diversity council. And make sure that your diversity council has diversity in it. Typically, diversity councils that I've seen where we fall down is that it's a whole bunch of diverse individuals of some type, some form of underrepresented group, and it's usually all folks from underrepresented groups on your diversity council. But at the end of the day, I specifically did this recently where we had an opening, and I said, we don't have a straight white person on our committee. to me, that was a gap. And so I painstakingly tried to make sure that I had somebody from that group that was on my diversity council. So make sure that you have representation from all levels of the organization. Business employee resource groups, as I said earlier, might be, yes, that's great. But if that doesn't work, maybe look at focus groups. Last couple things here. My advice for hiring managers, because oftentimes we're talking about senior leaders. We've already talked about frontline staff members, but we need to think about who's hiring individuals into our building, into our organization, and are they attending the programming? Are they attending anything that's going on outside? Right? So we should make sure that they're attending those. Are there books that they could read? Strategically, maybe there's a hiring manager that there's an issue, right? And you get that person, if they're a leader, right? One way to look at this is typically, again, you put a Black leader in the Black ERG, right? But if it's a senior leader who's, has issues with another organization, depending on if they have the emotional maturity, you need to make sure that you have that first, and you put them as a sponsor on one of the other organizations. Because I've seen this not even at that level. I've just seen this when I've worked with community-based organizations, and you try to get folks hired from that community-based organization, and I didn't get much traction. But when I found that I got my hiring manager involved with this community-based organization, they're over at this organization, they're hearing these stories, all of a sudden you start getting buy-in because now they've seen them, they've heard the story, and there's more buy-in. So if you take a hiring manager that is problematic, then we address that and you have that hard conversation. You say, you know what, I think for your training, for your education, for your development, I think what we should have you do is work with this group. All right. Have them involved in, DEIB presentations. And quite simply, easy, no cost involved, sit down with somebody different from you, right? Allows you to gain a personal perspective of different perspectives. It empowers you to make changes in the workplace. So when you see that as a leader of DEIB work, and you see that going on, and you see somebody that's in conflict, have that difficult conversation. Say, you know what, John, I think you should be sitting down with Sue. I think you need to go have a cup of coffee, say, hey, listen, I need to hit the reset button, and we need to have a conversation over a cup of coffee. And one or two things is going to happen. Either they're going to have another blow up, and it is a problem, right? Or they start finding common ground. But it won't happen unless you put those two together. Celebration, recognition of heritage, culture, and generations while educating. Again, some people say this is performative. I don't. I think it's educational within. All of the programming that I do is predominantly for folks that are outside of that group that I'm doing recognition, celebration around, but also it brings a sense of education and training, and certainly brings a sense of pride in there. And then, listen, some people shy away from it because they're afraid they're going to miss somebody. And that is going to happen. But it's how you respond is key. How you respond to that. I will tell you, inevitably, throughout my career, we do this, right? And I will have someone who is white who will say, well, when are you going to do something for white folks? And you need to talk that through. And this did occur where my HR, my GM got that question from somebody and they didn't handle it appropriately. They were somewhat annoyed. They were a little bit, concerned about this. And yes, the person might have been baiting them into the conversation, but I say you should come from, and this is how I handled it in my organization. You should come from a place of curiosity. One of our tenants, and say, well, tell me more. What do you mean? If they're baiting you into it, the conversation is going to go in a different direction, right? They're going to back off. But maybe they genuinely have something that might be of value to you that you had a blind spot for. And they say, well, I think we should, who knows, whatever that is. Certainly, we're not going to do something um, that is problematic. But if it's something that makes sense and it's something that you've missed, then it may be something you should do. And in fact, the next one is something that occurred for me. I had been practicing in California for many, many years, and I got to New Jersey, and my HR coordinator, came to me and said, "I think we should do Haitian Flag Day." I said, "What is that? I don't know what that is." She said, "Well, it's a celebration. Many Haitians celebrate Haitian Flag Day. So, well, what do you have in mind? What do you want to do?" And she said, "Well, I want to go online Amazon and buy a bunch of Haitian flags. I want to play some Haitian music in the cafeteria, and I want to talk to the chef about having Haitian food. Let's do it." When I got promoted to the corporate offices, art was nearby this hotel. And when I would come back to that hotel, I cannot tell you how many people ran up to me bringing back Haitian Flag Day to me, saying, "You're the only one that ever saw us. You're the only one that ever recognized us." Something as simple as that. So I would encourage you to do that. Okay, I think we only got 5 minutes. I won't run through these. I will just tell you, you could go on to LinkedIn right now. If you look at my company, you will see when we have a Heritage Month, um, we'll ask everybody 5, 6 questions. And the last question is this: how does ACE differ from other companies you've worked for? 90% of the answers are always this: that I can bring my whole self to work. 90% of them say something like that. So it's one thing that I'm very proud of. And I think that that is paramount for us. So with that, thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me get up on my soapbox and spend time with you. And in the last couple of minutes, my question back to you is: did we hit everything you needed? If not, drop it in the chat or drop it in the QA. Oops, sorry. Here, let me look and see. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much, Victor. Great presentation. Beautiful. Love